So one of the important things to note about Morocco is they have what are called imperial cities, and there are 4 of them. So what that means is an imperial city either was or is currently the capital of Morocco, Rabat being the current capital. So starting with the very first capital, you have Fez, which is located in kind of the central north area of Morocco. And so here are just some images. So on the top right, you have the entrance gate to the Medina or Old City in Fez. In the center, you have the gates to the royal palace, since the King of Morocco has a residency there when he wants to escape the humidity of Rabat. The bottom right-hand picture is a scene from the rooftop, so you can see essentially what the Fez city line is like in the old city. Fez is remarkable because it has an intact medieval city, and so a lot of people have studied the architecture of Fez to look at medieval Islamic architecture, particularly how buildings were built facing this central courtyard, because one, that shields you from view from the street, but 2, also allows air circulation, which is particularly useful for Fez because it can get well over 100 degrees during the summer. And then on the left-hand side, you have essentially the entrance to a madrasa or school in modern Fez. And this was built by the Marinid dynasty. And there's actually a twin of this particular madrasa in Meknès, which we'll get to in a little bit. So then there is Marrakesh, which is the southernmost imperial city, and it was the base of operations for various Moroccan dynasties, such as the Almoravids, Almohads, and the Saadians later on. One of the notable landmarks in Fez is the Kotoubian Mosque, which you can see its minaret on the left-hand side. And as I mentioned earlier about the inward-facing architecture, you have this example on the upper right of what a riad looks like. So a riad is a traditional style house in Morocco. The name riad actually refers to garden, because usually there are trees and sometimes fountains in the center of this. But this is an example of how everything faces a courtyard. And then in the bottom, you have the souk or market in Fez. This is just one example. This is a covered section. So moving on to the city I mentioned earlier in terms of having the twin madrasa or school, which you can see in the upper right-hand corner. Now, Meknès essentially is an imperial city because of one man in particular, Moulay Ismail bin Sharif, and he was a member of the Alawite dynasty, the current dynasty that the King of Morocco today is descended from, where he moved the capital to Meknès during his lifetime. And the bottom right-hand corner is an example of the horse stables that he had built, which then brings us to Rabat. So Rabat is the capital of Morocco, and it is where the parliament is, as well as where the king's usual residence is. So in the upper picture, you have a good picture of what the Kasbah, or essentially the main fortified part of Rabat, looks like, overlooking the river. Now this picture is taken across the river from the city of Salé, which is just to the north, in which today Salé was this very famous or infamous pirate capital, but today is essentially a larger kind of city that's connected to the greater Rabat Salé area. And a lot of people who work in Rabat actually live and commute from Salé. Speaking of commuting, one of the nicer things about Rabat is its public transit system. Besides taxis being very affordable, you have a tram that runs through a good portion of the city, as pictured there. So And then in terms of its history, though, because Rabat was essentially built up by the Almoravids as a launching point for their invasion of what would become Spain, you have the Hassan Tower, which was never fully completed, but it was initially intended as being part of the largest mosque in the world. And the minaret, or at least the partially completed minaret you can see in the left-hand corner, is only about halfway finished. It was supposed to be twice the height it was, but it was abandoned after the death of the Sultan and further damaged by an earthquake. So it remains this historical site. So having covered briefly some of the geography, which we'll get back to other notable places at the end,